We've got Harold Steves up next. You guys might remember him from October. He's an organic veggie and alfalfa seed grower, cattle rancher, former BC NDP MLA, Richmond City Councillor, as Tony Mitra let us all know. He's the Vice Chair of Planning and Agriculture for Metro Vancouver. He's also a member of the ALR, which if you don't know what the ALR is, please look that up and go and support that. It is direct for our cause. And on top of all that, he's a geneticist as well. Harold Steves.
Well, thank you very much. You know, I've been wondering where we're going to find people, young people, to take our place. Well, we just met one of them today. Fantastic. Well, we're back here again to give a message to Monsanto once more. We want to tell them once more, we don't want your GMO seeds. We don't want your poisoned food. And we want to know what's GMO. Let's hear it. We want to know what's GMO. We want to know what's GMO. We want to know what's GMO. We're farmers in our family. We grow seeds and vegetables and cattle. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what one of the other speakers spoke about. In the 1960s, the city of Richmond sprayed the blackberries on the dike that runs through our farm. People worried that the children were eating the blackberries. The mayor of Richmond said, and I quote directly, "It's only brush killer. The sprays are non-toxic." I called the Vancouver Poison Center, and the Vancouver Poison Center said, quote, "Consumption of large quantities could cause an allergy. Wash the berries." Well, we washed the berries. My wife made blackberry pie, and I made blackberry wine, and the kids ate the berries. How did we know the sprays were safe? Monsanto told us so. That's what they told the soldiers in Vietnam. The non-toxic spray that we were putting in our blackberries was Agent Orange, and you heard how it was sprayed all across Canada. They sprayed the dikes of Richmond. They sprayed the BC hydro lines, they sprayed the CNR and CPR lines in Richmond on all the way through British Columbia. We had people complaining because the spray drift. The drift sprayed into orchards, and people, their children eating the orchards got stomach aches, got sick and threw up, and they contacted me because I was concerned about what was happening at our farm. Another spray crew came through, one of our cows got sick, aborted, and lived a slow, lingering death. It was terrible. We brought in the veterinarian, and the veterinarian said, "Your animal's been poisoned. I can't prove it. There's no test to tell what it is." So we went on a campaign to ban the spraying. We didn't even know it was Agent Orange. It was just brush killer. And I think we were probably the first city in Canada to ban brush killer spraying on our dikes and our ditches. It took us years to get hydro and the railway lines to ban it. So eventually we got the 2,4-D, 2,4,5-T Agent Orange banned, but Agent Orange has a 10-year half-life, and they sprayed it for 10 or 15 years, and so that dike land that goes through our farm and those ditch banks in Richmond and those rail lines, I suspect still have lingering Agent Orange in those sites, and goodness knows what that is doing to affect the environment in those areas. Well, then along came Roundup. And Monsanto lied again. They lied about Agent Orange, they lied about Roundup, they lied about saccharin, they lied about aspartame. They've been doing it for 100 years. So this is nothing new. They told us Roundup is safe to put on the food, it's biodegradable. In the soil, you put it on the plant, what doesn't go in the plant goes out of the soil, it gets into the mud and the dirt, and it's absorbed and becomes nothing. It just disappears. That's what they said. That's what they told the farmers. It just disappears. We now know that isn't true. In fact, it lingers in the soil, and it can reconstitute itself under certain conditions and start working again on other plants. And then along came GMOs, and Monsanto told us GMOs are safe. Well, after 100 years of lies, are we still believing Monsanto?
No, we are not.
What Monsanto has done, however, over those years is they have captured total corporate control of our seeds, our land, our food, and even the land that the food is being grown on, the very food we eat. It is an insidious, dangerous, fascist type of organization. We told Tony, I heard Tony say earlier that we have to rise up against this company. Monsanto is what must be banned. Well, we got more concerns in Richmond, and we got a campaign going to get rid of the pesticides, because the pesticides, like Agent Orange, at least we had that one was gone, but Roundup and some of these other things are pretty nasty. So we started a campaign in Richmond to ban cosmetic pesticides in people's yards, and we had an ulterior motive for it, which I'll get to in a minute. And in 2009, we successfully banned the cosmetic pesticides in Richmond, and asked people not to put Roundup and other stuff on their gardens and their lawns. And we don't have garden police going around doing it, but people are pretty good. I saw one fellow squirting something on a sidewalk last week, and I said, I hope that's vinegar. I mean, you just do it lightly, and they get the message. And then a couple of years later, we thought, well, they're still selling GMO crops, GMO seeds, and the only reason to have GMOs is if you put pesticides on them. So let's ban the GMOs as well. So 2012, Richmond banned the GMOs. And the campaign went through British Columbia. And some, I think 50 or 60 communities have now banned the GMOs throughout BC. They went to the UBCM as being opposed there. What I'd urge everyone here to do is, if your community has, hey, they love us down here. There's a police coming in and give us a holler. I think he's after Monsanto.
I hope.
Yeah. Anyway, what we'd like you to do, find out if your city or your community has banned the GMOs or not, and the cosmetic pesticides. You need to ban both. And I'll tell you why. As mentioned earlier, I'm on Mitra in Vancouver on the Planning and Agriculture Committee. And what we have done with the yard waste in Richmond that we're now picking up, we're picking up all the garbage, we're recycling everything, but we're picking up lawn clippings, the leaves off the trees, and even food waste. And we're taking it to a site in Richmond that's no longer a landfill site. It's called Harvest Power. And they've set up a big dome called an anaerobic digester, and they put all this organic material in it, because normally when yard waste rots away, methane gas is given off, and that's a greenhouse gas. So they capture the methane, they burn the methane, and get electricity from it, and carbon dioxide is given off, which is normal. And then, of course, you have to replace the carbon dioxide with oxygen. Well, how do we do that? All of the material that comes out of the anaerobic digester is compost. And because we ban GMOs and because we ban all these cosmetic pesticides, it is clean. There's no stuff in it that can poison your crops. And so it is good enough, it's been tested, it's good enough to go on organic gardens. And this year we have farms in Richmond now putting what used to go to the garbage dump in Cache Creek. The food wastes from the city of Richmond are going on farms in Richmond. And the message I have is that every community, if you keep the poisons out of your food waste, out of your garden waste, it can be recycled and put back into the soil and create food once again. And that's what we want you to do. Well, that leads me back to Monsanto, however. And I just want to make a comment that back in 1975, I guess it was, Europe did something that wasn't too nice. They made patenting of food legal, and they banned a lot of plants, vegetable plants. In fact, I grow illegal stuff. It's not even pot, it's vegetables. When they banned the seeds in Europe, I went and I collected up a lot of the seeds that were banned in Europe and brought them home. I've got a daughter in Glasgow, and we grow the banned crops here in Richmond that they banned in Europe. They were heirloom crops that had been developed by farmers over hundreds of years, largely to grow in northern climates. And what Monsanto does, and what they have done, and other companies like them, is they have bought out all the local food companies like Buckerfields and Sanctuary Seeds in this area years ago, destroyed all that genetic diversity, all those vegetable plants that grew in the north, and substituted them with GMO crops that grow in the south. And so you can grow your GMO tomato and ship it to Vancouver, and it's got a hard shell on it. Boy, we need to put that liquid in those tomatoes, because you can't even cut it off with an axe, it's so hard. It has to ship 3,000 miles. But that's what they do with GMOs. They try to design the crops that they can sell, that they can ship. And they had to get rid of our indigenous vegetable crops by banning them, or by buying out the companies and shutting them down. So we collected up a lot of those varieties, and on our farm we grow about 50 or 60 varieties of crops that no longer exist, that someday we'll be growing in the Peace River country, someday we'll be growing in Kamloops again, and certainly around here.
Fantastic.
50 years ago, Kamloops was the tomato capital of Canada, if you can believe it. Kamloops. We think of it as cattle country. They grew the most incredible tomatoes on the benchlands along the Fraser and Thompson River. They have lots of water. They just brought the water up the hill and irrigated. They were put out of business by the cheap crops grown in California and Mexico, and the subsidized fuel to bring those crops here. But we can grow crops in British Columbia, and we can feed ourselves. And that leads me to another thing I want to raise today. I think we need to combine what we're talking about in terms of GMOs and what's happening to the land around us. The land around us is under threat with Bill 24, the new Agricultural Land Act, where they want to give the people that frack the soil the right over farms. Frack, by the way, is a new farm word, a 5-letter farm word I want you to learn. It's clean. They're fracking our farms, and we're fracking them back. What the fracking does is very much like what the GMOs do. They frack the shale under the ground and to get the natural gas, to make liquid natural gas. It poisons the water. The plants suck up the water, and that poisons the plants. So any food you eat from a fracked field is the same as eating a Monsanto-produced crop with GMOs and glyphosate on it. So effectively, we now have the petrochemical companies that are involved with Monsanto in the first place fracking our farms and poisoning our crops through another method. The other aspect I want to raise with you is the Site C Dam. Now, this is a dam that has been, they're looking at building on the Peace River, and they're going to flood somewhere between 16,000 and 30,000 acres of Class 1 farmland. It's the best farmland in the world. They say, oh, the climate's terrible. It's only terrible in the winter. In the summertime, the sun moves north, they get longer days and sunnier and hotter days than we do, and it's productive farmland. So think north. Instead of bringing our food from California, which is now a burned out desert, or Mexico, we can bring it from the North Country. We can be GMO free, we can be fracking free, and we can have Peace River water to grow our crops rather than damming it. Well, I want to finish up with a couple other comments about Dow Chemical. And Dow Chemical has now developed an 2,4-D glyphosate enlist corn and soybean, that was mentioned earlier. And of course, Agent Orange was actually invented by ICI from Britain in World War II. It was used for chemical warfare, and so we use chemical warfare on our food that we eat. So they're trying to get that new one out into the system. And we're fighting that because we don't need the Agent Orange in our food. But what has happened is that they have to have a new chemical, because after 15 or 20 years of glyphosate, the weeds have become resistant. There are now 41 different weeds that just gobble the stuff up and grow, and they just smile. Sure, pour that stuff on me, and they laugh back at Monsanto. And so it isn't working. And so they have to find something else, and they're using that one portion of Agent Orange. And after they've used 2,4-D, the next thing they would have to do is go after 2,4,5-T, which is the other half of Agent Orange. And after that, there's nothing else. But by the time they've used Agent Orange and all its components, our soils will be contaminated for decades to come, and our food will be in a terrible condition. Well, a study's been done by a university in New Zealand. The University of Canterbury in 2013 did some crop studies on canola yields in Europe and in Canada. And while Europe allowed patenting of foods, which meant we lost a lot of foods that aren't patented, they did ban a certain amount of GMO production. And they banned the growing of GMO canola. And what they found last year in the studies done by the University of Canterbury, that in Canada and in the USA, we have 40% less crop production than they get in Europe, where they don't use GMOs. And at the same time, they use far less pesticides. They are learning that pesticides are not good. They're learning to go organic or near organic. So their crop production is 40% higher than ours. How do they do it? It's that compost I just told you about. They've been doing it for years. What you take from the fields, you put back in the fields. You don't put chemical fertilizers on the fields. You don't put chemical poisons on the fields. You put organics on the fields. You don't throw anything away. And that's what we're going to do. And that's what you've got to tell every city councillor and every city. We can choose the European model. We can improve our crop production by 40% over GMO production by using organics back into the soil instead of sending it off to garbage dumps and dumping it into our oceans and into our rivers. That's the way we're going to feed the world. We're not going to feed the world with GMOs. It's time to fight back. And I want to tell you, I looked around just now, one way of fighting back. I don't notice any dandelions in the crowd. We got bees and we got bugs. But next time, bring dandelions. I want you to fight back with dandelions. Because I want to tell you a story about alfalfa. We grow alfalfa and they want to create GMO alfalfa. We looked at our alfalfa fields. When you plow the field under and plant the alfalfa, it comes up really thick. And it snuffs out all the weeds except dandelions. So we investigated dandelions. We got lots of dandelions. Are we going to have to spray dandelions to get rid of them? There's a lot of work pulling them. The dandelions, when they're irrigated, they grow the leaves about that tall, about that wide. They're huge. And we thought, I wonder what a dandelion's made of. We found out it had all kinds of wonderful little chemicals in it that are beneficial to eat. And we found it had 13% protein, the same as the alfalfa. So we grow dandelions. So my message is, if you're worried about your lawn and anything else, it doesn't look beautiful unless it's got nice little yellow flowers in it. If you've got a lawn that's green and pristine, that guy may be spraying his lawn. If he hasn't got a dandelion to prove it, that he's not using GMOs and spraying his lawn. So we need a dandelion revolution. The final thing I want to say is that we really do have to have a fight to save our farms, our farmland, and our food. Farms, farmland, and food. And it's an all-out battle that we're coming up to today. We had Pat Prim and Bill Bennett when they brought in Bill 24 saying they want to frack our farms. And my comment was back, said frack Pat Prim, but it didn't work. They want to flood the Peace River, and as I mentioned, it's 1,600 to 3,000 acres. And I'd like you to join in me in telling them what we think of these things. Leo Sayers, a singer in Australia, made up a chant, I guess you call it. It's called a song, and I want to try it here today. It's about fracking. And he says, did they think we'd let them do it? No fracking way, okay? Did they think we'd let them do it? No fracking way! Did they think we'd want to let them build the Sightsee Dam? No fracking way! Did they think we'd let them flood the Peace? No fracking way! Did they think we'd want to frack the ALR with Bill 24? No fracking way! Do they think we'd want them to frack our food with GMOs? No fracking way! Do they want us to frack our food with poison on the food? No fracking way! Do we really like Monsanto? No fracking way! Do we really like Monsanto? No fracking way! No fracking way! Thank you very much.